The ceremony of shame. The morning sun cast long shadows across the naval base at Norfolk as Captain James Mitchell stood at attention in his dress blues. The gold stripes on his sleeves caught the early light, but they would not remain there much longer. Around him, 5,000 sailors formed a massive square formation on the parade ground, their faces a mixture of curiosity and somber anticipation. Captain Mitchell had served the United States Navy for 23 years. He had commanded destroyers through rough seas, led rescue missions in hurricane-battered waters, and earned the respect of every man who served under him. His record was spotless, his dedication unquestionable. Yet here he stood, about to face the most humiliating moment any naval officer could endure. The charges against him seemed impossible to those who knew him well. Abandonment of duty, cowardice in the face of enemy action, and failure to engage a hostile submarine that had been detected near American waters. The court-martial had lasted 3 weeks, with testimony from dozens of witnesses. The evidence appeared overwhelming, though many who served with Mitchell found it difficult to believe. Admiral Robert Harrison approached the podium, his weathered face showing no emotion. He had known Mitchell since the man was a young lieutenant, had watched him rise through the ranks with pride. Now he was tasked with carrying out one of the Navy's most severe punishments. The ceremony of dismissal was reserved for only the gravest offenses, a public stripping of rank and honor that would echo through the officer's life forever. "Captain James Mitchell," Admiral Harrison's voice carried across the silent formation, "you have been found guilty by court-martial of conduct, unbecoming an officer and abandonment of your post during a critical engagement with enemy forces." The wind picked up slightly, rustling the flags that lined the parade ground. Mitchell kept his eyes fixed straight ahead, his jaw set in determination. He had maintained his innocence throughout the trial, insisting that something was wrong with the official reports. But the evidence had been too strong, the testimonies too consistent. "The sentence of this court-martial is dismissal from service, reduction in rank to seaman recruit, and forfeiture of all pay and benefits," the admiral continued. "Let this serve as an example to all who wear the uniform of the United States Navy that duty and honor are not negotiable." 2 Master Chiefs stepped forward, their movements precise and mechanical. The first began removing Mitchell's shoulder boards, the gold stripes that marked his rank as captain. Each piece came away slowly, methodically, as if the ceremony itself were a form of torture designed to maximize the humiliation. The assembled sailors watched in absolute silence. Many had served under Mitchell at various points in their careers. They remembered his fair leadership, his willingness to put himself in danger for his men, his genuine care for their welfare. Seeing him stripped of his rank felt wrong to them, but military discipline demanded they remain silent witnesses to his fall. Next came the ribbons and medals from his chest. Each decoration represented years of service, acts of courage, and dedication to duty. The Navy Cross, earned during a daring rescue mission in hostile waters 5 years earlier, was removed with the same cold efficiency as the rest. The Purple Heart, received after his ship was damaged in an engagement with pirates off the coast of Somalia, followed. Mitchell's face remained stoic throughout the process, but those close enough could see the slight tremor in his hands. This was not just the end of his career, it was the destruction of everything he had worked for since graduating from the Naval Academy 25 years ago. The final humiliation came when the second Master Chief stepped forward with a pair of scissors. Mitchell's gold naval aviator wings, earned during his early years as a helicopter pilot, were cut from his uniform. The metallic sound of the scissors seemed to echo across the silent parade ground. As the ceremony neared its end, Admiral Harrison spoke again. "James Mitchell, you are hereby dismissed from the United States Navy. You will surrender your identification, remove your uniform, and depart this base immediately." But as the last of Mitchell's insignia was removed, something strange began to happen in the waters beyond the naval base. The sonar operators in the control tower had been monitoring routine shipping traffic when their screens suddenly showed something impossible. A large submarine signature was approaching the harbor, moving at a depth and speed that defied conventional technology. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the duty sonar operator, stared at her screen in disbelief. The signature was massive, larger than any submarine in the American fleet, and it was moving with a silence that should have been impossible for something so large. She quickly called her supervisor, who confirmed the reading and immediately contacted the base commander. Meanwhile, on the parade ground, the ceremony continued. Mitchell had been escorted to a holding area where he was required to change into civilian clothes. The Navy would provide him with a bus ticket home and nothing more. 23 years of service reduced to a single ride back to whatever life he could build from the ruins of his career. The 5,000 sailors began to disperse, many of them shaking their heads in confusion and disappointment. They had witnessed something they would talk about for years to come, though none of them yet understood that this ceremony was about to be overshadowed by events that would change everything. In the sonar room, the mysterious submarine signature had moved closer to shore. Its behavior was unlike anything the operators had ever seen. It seemed to be deliberately positioning itself near the harbor entrance, as if waiting for something or someone. Lieutenant Chen enhanced the sonar image, trying to get a better reading on the vessel. What she saw made her blood run cold. The submarine appeared to be using technology that was decades ahead of anything currently known to exist. Its acoustic signature was so faint that it should have been invisible to their equipment, yet somehow it was allowing itself to be detected. The base commander, Admiral William Foster, received the sonar report just as the dismissal ceremony was concluding. His first thought was that they were dealing with a foreign submarine conducting reconnaissance on the naval base. He immediately ordered increased security and began protocols for dealing with a potential hostile presence. But the submarine made no aggressive moves. It simply held position near the harbor entrance, as if waiting. The sonar operators reported that it occasionally moved in slow, deliberate patterns, but never approached close enough to constitute a direct threat. As news of the mysterious submarine spread through the base, a strange feeling began to settle over the personnel. The timing seemed too coincidental, appearing just as Captain Mitchell was being stripped of his rank and dismissed from service. Some of the older sailors began to whisper among themselves, remembering stories they had heard about the incident that had led to Mitchell's court-martial. The official report had stated that Mitchell's destroyer, the USS Defender, had encountered a hostile submarine 3 months earlier. According to the testimony given at the court-martial, Mitchell had ordered his ship to withdraw from the engagement, allowing the enemy submarine to escape. Multiple witnesses had testified to this version of events, and the ship's logs had supported their claims. But there had been inconsistencies in the story that had troubled some of the sailors who served on the Defender. Several crew members had privately expressed doubts about the official version of events, though none had been willing to contradict the testimony given by senior officers during the trial. Now, with this mysterious submarine appearing at the exact moment of Mitchell's dismissal, those doubts began to resurface. The sonar operators continued to track the unknown vessel, noting that its technology appeared to be far beyond anything currently known to exist in any world navy. As Captain Mitchell changed into his civilian clothes in the base detention facility, he was unaware of the drama unfolding in the harbor. He sat on a narrow bench, staring at the naval uniform he would never wear again. The fabric that had been his second skin for over 2 decades now seemed foreign and distant. A young Marine guard watched him with curiosity and sympathy. The guard had heard about Mitchell's reputation and found it difficult to reconcile the stories of heroism with the crimes for which the captain had been convicted. But orders were orders, and his job was simply to ensure that Mitchell left the base quietly and without incident. Outside, the mysterious submarine continued to hold its position. The base had gone to a heightened state of alert, with patrol boats being dispatched to investigate the unknown vessel. But as they approached the location indicated by sonar, they found nothing but empty water. The submarine had the ability to become completely invisible to both sonar and visual detection when it chose to do so. It was technology that defied current understanding of physics and engineering, representing capabilities that were decades ahead of anything currently available to any known military force. Admiral Foster found himself in an impossible situation. His sonar was detecting a submarine that his patrol boats could not locate. The timing of its appearance, coinciding with Mitchell's dismissal ceremony, seemed too deliberate to be coincidental, but without being able to physically locate the vessel, he was limited in his response options. As the afternoon wore on, the submarine continued its patient vigil near the harbor entrance. It seemed to be waiting for something specific, though no one could determine what that might be. The sonar operators reported that it occasionally moved in patterns that seemed almost like communication, as if trying to send a message to someone on shore. The phantom surfaces. The sun was beginning to set over Norfolk Naval Base when the impossible happened. The mysterious submarine that had been lurking beneath the harbor waters for hours suddenly broke the surface with a grace that defied physics. No massive spray of water, no thunderous emergence that typically marked a submarine's ascent. Instead, it rose from the depths as silently as a shadow, its black hull gleaming in the fading light. Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez was the first to spot it from the harbor watchtower. He had been scanning the waters with high-powered binoculars when the sleek form materialized about a mile from shore. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. The vessel looked unlike any submarine he had ever seen, with curves and angles that seemed almost organic, as if it had been grown rather than built. "Sir, you need to see this," Rodriguez called to his watch commander, passing the binoculars with hands that trembled slightly. Lieutenant Commander Patricia Wells took the glasses and focused on the water. What she saw made her question everything she thought she knew about naval technology. The submarine was enormous, easily twice the length of the largest vessels in the American fleet. Its hull was a deep black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making it difficult to determine its exact dimensions even in the clear evening air. Strange protrusions along its sides might have been weapon systems or sensor arrays, but they followed no design philosophy that Wells recognized. Most disturbing of all was the complete absence of any identifying marks or national symbols. No flag, no hull numbers, no visible crew members on what appeared to be a conning tower that defied conventional submarine architecture. It simply sat in the water like a sleeping leviathan, silent and ominous. Word of the surfaced submarine spread through the base with lightning speed. Admiral Foster was contacted immediately, and within minutes, every available patrol boat was racing toward the mysterious vessel. F-18 fighter jets were scrambled from the nearby airfield, their engines screaming as they climbed into the darkening sky. But as the naval forces approached, something extraordinary occurred. A panel slid open on the submarine's hull, revealing a communications array that began broadcasting on standard naval frequencies. The message that came through the radio speakers was clear, calm, and spoke in perfect English with no accent that anyone could identify. United States Naval Forces, this is the vessel Leviathan. We are here regarding Captain James Mitchell. We request permission to send a representative to discuss his case. We have information that will change your understanding of recent events. The message sent shockwaves through the base command structure. How could anyone aboard this unknown submarine know about Mitchell's court-martial? And why would they surface now, just hours after his dismissal ceremony? Admiral Foster found himself facing a situation for which no naval protocol had been written. The patrol boats had formed a defensive perimeter around the mysterious submarine, but their crews reported something unsettling. Despite being only a few hundred yards away, they could barely make out the vessel's details with the naked eye. It seemed to shimmer and distort like a mirage, making it nearly impossible to get accurate photographs or visual intelligence. Meanwhile, Captain Mitchell was being processed out of the base detention facility. The Marine Guard had received orders to escort him to the front gate, where a bus would take him to the nearest civilian airport. Mitchell walked slowly, carrying a small bag containing the few personal items he was allowed to keep. His civilian clothes felt strange after decades in uniform. As they made their way across the base, the sound of jet engines and increased activity caught Mitchell's attention. The Marine Guard had received radio updates about the mysterious submarine, but had been instructed not to discuss the situation with the prisoner. Still, Mitchell could sense that something significant was happening. Back at the harbor, Admiral Foster was faced with an unprecedented decision. The submarine had made peaceful contact and requested dialogue, but its unknown origins and advanced technology represented a potential security threat. After consulting with Pentagon officials via secure communication, he made the choice to allow a representative from the vessel to come aboard. The response from the Leviathan was immediate. A section of the submarine's hull opened to reveal what appeared to be a small craft that defied easy description. It was neither boat nor aircraft, but something that seemed to combine elements of both. It separated from the mother vessel and approached the flagship with movements that seemed to ignore conventional physics. Admiral Foster watched from the bridge of the USS Hampton as the craft approached. It was roughly the size of a naval launch, but moved with impossible smoothness across the water. No visible propulsion system, no wake or disturbance of the surface, just silent, effortless motion that made seasoned naval officers question their understanding of marine engineering. The craft came alongside the Hampton and somehow attached itself to the hull without any visible mechanism. A section of its side slid open to reveal a single occupant who stepped aboard the American warship with confident, measured movements. The figure was clearly human, tall and lean with short-cropped gray hair and wearing what appeared to be a naval uniform of unfamiliar design. The material was a deep blue that seemed to shift color slightly in different light, and the cut was both functional and elegant in a way that suggested advanced textile technology. "Admiral Foster," the stranger said, extending a hand in greeting. "I am Commander Vale. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I believe you will find our information regarding Captain Mitchell quite illuminating." Foster studied the man carefully. His bearing was unmistakably military, and his handshake was firm and professional. But there was something in his eyes that suggested experiences far beyond those of any ordinary naval officer. The Admiral decided to proceed cautiously. "Commander Vale, I'll be direct. Who are you? And what is your interest in one of our dismissed officers?" Vale smiled slightly, as if he had expected the question. "Admiral, 3 months ago, your Captain Mitchell encountered something in the waters off the Virginia coast. The official report states that he fled from a hostile submarine, abandoning his duty and allowing an enemy vessel to escape. I am here to tell you that this report is completely false." The statement hung in the air like a challenge. Admiral Foster had personally reviewed the court-martial transcripts and found the evidence against Mitchell to be overwhelming. Multiple witnesses had testified to seeing Mitchell order his destroyer to withdraw from the engagement. "The evidence against Captain Mitchell was thoroughly examined," Foster replied. Multiple crew members testified to his actions during the incident. "Admiral," Vale continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone, "the submarine that the USS Defender encountered was not hostile. It was not even from any nation currently existing on Earth. Captain Mitchell did not flee from the engagement because he was a coward. He withdrew because he recognized that he was facing technology so far advanced that any attempt at combat would have resulted in the complete destruction of his ship and the death of his entire crew. The words sent a chill through everyone present on the bridge. The implication was staggering, but the calm certainty in Vale's voice made it impossible to dismiss his claims as the ravings of a madman. "The submarine your captain encountered belongs to us," Vale continued. "We are representatives of a civilization that has existed in Earth's oceans for far longer than your surface nations have existed. We have watched your naval development with great interest, and occasionally we test your responses to contact." Admiral Foster felt his worldview shifting beneath his feet. The implications of what Vale was suggesting would change everything about humanity's understanding of its place on Earth. But the presence of the impossible submarine in his harbor lent credibility to even the most fantastic claims. "Captain Mitchell recognized our vessel for what it was," Vale explained. "His sonar operator detected acoustic signatures that no known submarine could produce. His weapons officer reported that our hull appeared to be made of materials that would be impervious to conventional torpedoes. Rather than waste lives in a futile attack, he chose to observe and gather intelligence." The commander paused, allowing his words to sink in before continuing. "Unfortunately, certain members of his crew were not prepared to accept what they had witnessed. They convinced themselves that they had encountered a conventional enemy submarine and that their captain had shown cowardice in not engaging it." Vale reached into his uniform and withdrew a small device that looked like no technology Foster had ever seen. It was roughly the size of a smartphone, but appeared to be made of a crystalline material that pulsed with internal light. "This contains the complete sensor records from our vessel during the encounter with the USS Defender," he said, offering the device to the admiral. "It will show you exactly what happened, including the false testimony given by certain crew members who chose to misrepresent events rather than acknowledge the reality of what they had experienced." Foster accepted the device, noting that it felt warm to the touch and seemed to vibrate slightly with some form of internal energy. The implications of what he was being told were almost too vast to comprehend. If Vale was telling the truth, then an innocent man had been destroyed for making the correct decision in an impossible situation. "Why are you revealing this now?" Foster asked. "Why not come forward during the court-martial?" Vale's expression became grave. "Captain Mitchell was supposed to be contacted by one of our representatives before his trial. He was meant to understand the true nature of what he had encountered and be given the opportunity to present the real facts of the case. Unfortunately, certain elements within your own military prevented that contact from occurring." The accusation hung heavy in the air. Foster realized that Vale was suggesting a conspiracy within the Navy itself, a cover-up designed to hide the truth about the encounter. But as shocking as that possibility was, it might explain some of the inconsistencies that had troubled observers of Mitchell's trial. As the conversation continued on the bridge of the Hampton, Captain Mitchell was nearing the base's front gate. The Marine Guard had grown increasingly uncomfortable as radio chatter about the mysterious submarine filled the airwaves around them. Something significant was clearly happening, and it seemed to be connected to the man he was escorting off the base. Mitchell himself remained lost in his own thoughts, replaying the events that had led to his downfall. The encounter with the unknown submarine 3 months earlier had indeed been unlike anything in his experience. The vessel had displayed capabilities that seemed impossible, and his decision to withdraw had been based on tactical assessment rather than cowardice. But his crew's insistence that they had faced a conventional enemy submarine had eventually convinced him that perhaps he had misinterpreted what he had seen. The stress of command, the pressure of the situation, and the certainty of his subordinates had led him to doubt his own perceptions. Now, as he walked toward exile and disgrace, he wondered if he had been right all along. The mysterious submarine in the harbor, appearing just as his naval career ended, seemed like more than mere coincidence. But he pushed such thoughts aside, focusing instead on the practical matter of building a new life from the ruins of the old. Back on the Hampton, Commander Vale was providing Admiral Foster with additional details about the encounter. The technology displayed by his civilization was apparently designed to test humanity's readiness for broader contact. Captain Mitchell's response had been exactly what they had hoped to see from a mature naval commander. "Your captain showed wisdom, restraint, and proper judgment," Vale explained. He recognized that he was facing something beyond his understanding and chose preservation of life over false heroics. "In our evaluation, he demonstrated the exact qualities that your species will need if it is to eventually join the broader community of intelligent life in this galaxy." The words sent another shock through Foster's system. The suggestion that Earth was being evaluated for membership in some kind of galactic community was beyond anything he had been prepared to contemplate when he woke up that morning. As the shadows lengthened across Norfolk Naval Base, the stage was set for revelations that would forever change the career of a disgraced captain and potentially alter humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The legend restored. The device that Commander Vale had given to Admiral Foster contained more than just sensor records. As the Admiral activated it using the simple touch interface, a three-dimensional holographic display materialized above the crystalline surface. The technology was so far beyond anything in the American military that several bridge officers stepped backward in surprise. The hologram showed the encounter between the USS Defender and the underwater civilization's vessel from multiple angles. The images were crystal clear, revealing details that no human technology could have captured. Foster watched in amazement as the events of 3 months ago unfolded before his eyes with perfect clarity. The submarine that Captain Mitchell had encountered was indeed massive and unlike anything in any Earth nation's fleet. Its hull seemed to ripple with energy fields, and weapon systems that defied current understanding of physics were clearly visible along its sides. Most importantly, the recording showed Mitchell's crew discussing their observations in real time. "Captain, that thing is reading our sonar like we're shouting at it," the voice of Lieutenant Sarah Park, the Defender's sonar operator, came through clearly. "And, sir, its acoustic signature is impossible. It's like it's displacing water without actually moving through it." Foster listened as Mitchell's measured voice responded. "Maintain distance and continue monitoring. I want complete sensor records of everything this vessel does. If this is some new foreign technology, we need every detail we can gather." The holographic display then shifted to show the interior of the Defender's bridge during the encounter. Foster could see Mitchell studying his instruments with intense concentration, clearly trying to understand what he was facing. There was no fear in the captain's demeanor, only professional assessment of an unprecedented situation. "Sir," came the voice of Lieutenant Commander Brian Torres, the Defender's weapons officer, "recommend we close to engagement range and demand identification. If they're testing our response, we should show them we're not intimidated." The hologram clearly captured Mitchell's response, and Foster felt his understanding of the court-martial evidence begin to crumble. "Commander, that vessel is displaying technology decades ahead of ours. Engaging it would be suicide for everyone aboard this ship. We maintain position and observe." Vale watched Foster's face as the Admiral processed what he was seeing. "Your captain made exactly the correct decision, Admiral. Our vessel was indeed testing his response, but it was also armed with defensive systems that would have easily destroyed the destroyer if he had chosen to attack." The recording continued, showing the underwater vessel performing maneuvers that violated known laws of physics. It moved through the water without creating the acoustic signatures that any conventional submarine would produce. At one point, it seemed to phase partially out of normal matter, becoming translucent before solidifying again. But the most shocking revelation came when the hologram shifted to show conversations among the Defender's crew after the encounter. Foster watched in growing horror as several senior officers discussed how to report the incident. "No one's going to believe what we saw out there," Lieutenant Commander Torres said to a group of officers in the ship's wardroom. "That thing was like something out of science fiction. If we report this accurately, they'll think we've all lost our minds." Chief Petty Officer Williams nodded in agreement. "Better to simplify it. Unknown submarine, probably foreign. Captain chose not to engage. Keep the weird stuff out of the report." Foster watched as the conspiracy to misrepresent the encounter took shape before his eyes. The officers convinced themselves that they were protecting the ship's reputation by presenting a conventional version of events. But their simplified report made Mitchell's caution look like cowardice rather than wisdom. The final piece of evidence that devastated Foster was a recording of Torres and Williams coaching other crew members on what to say during the court-martial. They had genuinely convinced themselves that they were doing the right thing by hiding the truth about the encounter's supernatural aspects. "Look, if we say the captain ran from some kind of alien submarine, they'll court-martial all of us for being crazy," Torres explained to junior officers. "We stick to the story that it was a conventional hostile contact and Mitchell chose not to engage." Vale deactivated the device, and the holographic display faded away. "Your captain was railroaded by his own crew, Admiral. They were so afraid of the implications of what they had witnessed that they chose to destroy an innocent man rather than face the truth." Foster sat heavily in his command chair, the full magnitude of the injustice becoming clear. Mitchell had made the correct tactical decision in an impossible situation, only to be betrayed by subordinates who lacked the courage to acknowledge what they had experienced. "Where is Captain Mitchell now?" Vale asked. "Being processed out of the base," Foster replied, his voice heavy with the weight of realization. "He should be at the front gate within the hour." Vale nodded grimly. "Admiral, I suggest you recall him immediately. What I have shown you represents only a fraction of the evidence we possess. Captain Mitchell deserves not only vindication but recognition for his exemplary judgment under unprecedented circumstances." Foster was already reaching for his communication device when Vale continued. "There is something else you should know. The encounter 3 months ago was not random. Captain Mitchell was specifically chosen for this test because our intelligence indicated that he possessed the wisdom and restraint necessary for first contact with our civilization." The implications hit Foster like a physical blow. "You've been monitoring our naval personnel? We have been observing your military for decades, Admiral. We know which of your officers possess the maturity for eventual contact with advanced civilizations and which do not. Captain Mitchell scored at the very top of our evaluation criteria." Vale paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle before continuing. His disgrace was not just a personal tragedy. It was a setback for humanity's eventual integration into the broader galactic community. Officers like Mitchell are rare, and his loss diminishes your species' readiness for what is coming. Admiral Foster immediately contacted the base security office and ordered Mitchell's recall before he could be transported off the base. The Marine Guard received the order just as they reached the front gate, where a civilian bus was waiting to take Mitchell to the airport. "Sir, I've been ordered to escort you back to the base commander's office," the Marine informed Mitchell, his confusion evident in his voice. Mitchell looked at the young Marine with tired eyes. After the humiliation of the day, he simply wanted to leave and begin the long process of rebuilding his shattered life. "There must be some mistake, Corporal. The dismissal ceremony is complete." "Sir, Admiral Foster specifically requested your immediate return, something about new evidence in your case." The words stirred something in Mitchell's chest that he had thought was dead. Hope was a dangerous thing for a man in his position, but he found himself unable to suppress it entirely. He followed the Marine back across the base, noting the unusual level of activity around the harbor. When they reached Admiral Foster's office, Mitchell was surprised to find it full of senior staff officers, all wearing expressions of barely controlled excitement. Foster himself looked like a man who had just witnessed something that challenged his fundamental understanding of reality. "Captain Mitchell," Foster began, then caught himself. "James, please sit down. We need to discuss your case." Mitchell remained standing, his military bearing intact despite everything he had endured. "Admiral, with respect, my case is closed. The court-martial reached its verdict, and the sentence has been carried out." "James, the court-martial was based on false testimony," Foster said bluntly. "Your crew lied about what happened during that encounter 3 months ago. We now have evidence that proves your actions were not only justified but exemplary." The words seemed to echo in the room. Mitchell felt his knees weaken slightly, but he maintained his composure. "Sir, I don't understand. The evidence against me was overwhelming." Foster activated the device that Vale had provided, and once again the holographic display materialized in the room. Mitchell watched in stunned silence as the true events of that day unfolded before him. He saw his own careful decision-making, heard his crew's real-time acknowledgement of the impossible technology they were facing, and witnessed the conspiracy that had led to his downfall. When the display faded, Mitchell stood in silence for a long moment, processing what he had seen. The vindication he had dreamed of was finally before him, but it came with revelations that challenged everything he thought he knew about the world. "The submarine you encountered belongs to an underwater civilization that has been observing our naval forces," Foster explained. "They were testing your judgment, and you passed with flying colors. Your crew's fear of the truth led them to betray both you and the Navy." Mitchell finally allowed himself to sit down, the weight of months of disgrace and self-doubt beginning to lift from his shoulders. "So I was right. It wasn't a conventional submarine." "You were more than right, Captain," Vale said, stepping forward from where he had been observing near the window. "You demonstrated exactly the qualities that advanced civilizations look for in potential allies. Your restraint and wisdom prevented what could have been a catastrophic first contact scenario." Mitchell looked at the stranger in the unfamiliar uniform, noting the otherworldly quality of the man's bearing. "And you are?" "Commander Vale, representing the civilization you encountered. I am here to formally apologize for the injustice you have suffered, and to ensure that the truth is finally acknowledged." The room fell silent as the full implications of the situation became clear to everyone present. This was not just about one man's vindication. It was about humanity's first confirmed contact with an advanced, non-human intelligence. Admiral Foster cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Captain Mitchell, on behalf of the United States Navy, I formally apologize for the injustice you have suffered. Your court-martial verdict is hereby declared invalid, and you are reinstated to your full rank with all rights and privileges." But Vale stepped forward again, his expression serious. "Admiral, with respect, simple reinstatement is insufficient. Captain Mitchell's exemplary judgment in an unprecedented situation deserves recognition, not just vindication." Foster nodded slowly. "What do you suggest?" "Promotion," Vale replied without hesitation, "and assignment to a position where his unique experience with our civilization can benefit both our peoples as we move forward with formal contact protocols." The suggestion sent another wave of shock through the assembled officers. The day had begun with Mitchell's disgrace and was ending with the possibility of his elevation to a position of unprecedented responsibility. Mitchell himself struggled to process the dramatic reversal of his fortunes. Months of shame and despair were being replaced by vindication and opportunity beyond anything he could have imagined. "There is one more thing," Vale added, his tone becoming even more serious. "The crew members who falsified testimony during Captain Mitchell's court-martial must face justice. Their actions not only destroyed an innocent man, but also compromised humanity's readiness for broader galactic contact." Foster nodded grimly. The officers who had betrayed Mitchell would indeed face consequences for their actions. But for now, the focus was on restoring the reputation and career of a man who had been wrongly destroyed for making the right decision in an impossible situation. As the sun set over Norfolk Naval Base, Captain James Mitchell found himself at the center of events that would reshape not only his own life, but humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The phantom submarine that had surfaced to witness his disgrace had instead become the instrument of his restoration to honor and his elevation to legend. The 5,000 sailors who had watched his insignia torn away would soon learn that they had witnessed not the fall of a coward, but the temporary eclipse of a hero whose true moment of glory was yet to come.